Most traders think that they need a new setup or maybe even some more screen time in order to grow. But more often than not, it's not your system that needs the upgrade, it's your mindset. And if you try to force that too fast, you risk blowing yourself up in the very progress. So today we're walking through something I call the mindset shift curve and how to accelerate your growth without breaking your system. So, welcome everybody to the show. My name is Mike Lamott, and uh, it's great to be back after a brief hiatus. As we're going through today's topic, I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments. So go right ahead right now. For those of you that are here with us live, go ahead, type into the chat. Let us know where you're from, where you're watching from, what platform, what part of the world. Always love hearing from you guys. And with that, let's get into a quick story. So I've coached hundreds of traders at this point, from fresh part-timers to guys that are running 6, 7 figure accounts. And there's a pattern that I tend to see over and over and over again, no matter which place you're coming from. Traders hit a wall. They've got a working system, technically, but the results don't quite match the effort. Have you experienced that? I know that I experienced that earlier in my journey. They don't feel stuck. They feel more frustrated. They feel they can feel tempted to abandon everything, especially when you've been in that zone for a long time. That's where people tend to either quit altogether or worse, they start adding, well, what's really noise, new indicators, new gurus, start revenge trading, all sorts of things like that. And maybe the part that gets people stuck the most is that they start to look at it as an evolution in their trading instead of what it actually is, which is an erosion. So let's take a look at what's really happening underneath all of that. So here's what I like to call the mindset shift curve. So I created this simple model here with the help of ChatGPT, put in the prompts and it spit this out. And I actually think that it's pretty good for the most part. This model attempts to visualize the internal journey that we'll call the mindset shift curve. So let's break down these 4 zones. So we've got this first zone, which is the frustration zone. Now, this is where most traders start. You're doing the work. Maybe it's not clicking yet. Maybe you've read a few of the books. Maybe you've read O'Neill's book. Maybe you've read Minervini's work. Maybe you've read some of my books. You're doing that, but it's not quite clicking yet. Maybe you even go and you start to listen to some podcasts. Maybe you hop on the Trader Lining channel and you listen to some of those great interviews that they've got there. And that they really do have a lot of great stuff over there. But it's not really clicking when you go to apply it and you start to feel emotionally raw. This is where you begin to question things. And this is the danger zone where most people either quit or they start to change their systems way too early, right in here in this frustration zone. Then, for those that make it through, something shifts. You finally start to see the real problem. The real problem for most people is not their edge. It's the execution of that edge, right? So say that you're somebody that's read O'Neill's books. You read How to Make Money in Stocks. Maybe you subscribe to Investors Business Daily, and you start to see that, you know what, this system actually does work, but it's not working for me. That's the awareness part. You start to notice certain patterns in your own behavior. This is where maybe you stop blaming the market. But here's a trap. It's easy to start to overcorrect, right? And this is where this section right here, I remember this section very distinctly in awareness, because at one point, well, when I was learning the ropes going back, this is really going back maybe about to 2011, somewhere in there, where I started to learn more about Can Slim. I started to be a part of the IBD meetup groups, and I started to see how some other people with more experience than me were trading the system. And I started to learn from other people. I remember Scott O'Neill, Bill O'Neill's son. He came and he gave a talk to us, and I was taking all these notes. And what I ended up doing was I overcorrected. Here's how I ended up with this long laundry list of rules. I had about 90 or so buy rules, about another 60, 70 or so sell rules. And it seemed like, man, if I just follow this, I'm going to, my equity curve is actually going to look like this, right? But that wasn't the case, at least not yet, because I had overcorrected. I had taken a system that was fairly straightforward, and I added all these layers of complexity to try to make it have a little bit more sense. On paper, it did make a lot of sense, but then when I'm trying to execute trades with 90 different buy rules, another 70 or so different sell rules, you could just imagine the confusion when you're trying to execute that way. Oh man, like that, this says to sell, but this over here says to buy. What do I do? And end up being like a deer in the headlights. Having mentorship, having the right mentorship at this stage makes all the difference in the world. Let's move on to integration. So here's the deal with integration. With integration, this is where you're starting to practice new habits. Things like journaling, maybe working with somebody one on one or in a group. You're still wobbling sometimes, and it's not where that's necessarily a bad thing, because you've come to realize that that's part of the process, and it's making the foundation that you're building even stronger, because you're learning that balance. In this integration phase, this is where structure really matters. Like the Mindset of Steel framework, that course that we recently re-released, or a daily review of your process. Nothing sexy, but just things that are effective. Having that routine where you list out everything that you're going to do before the market even opens. Maybe some of the things that you do, maybe you have a quick prayer session where you're getting yourself centered before you even turn on the computer. Maybe part of it is reviewing your analysis or your trade plans from the night before. That way it's fresh in your mind. That way you start to remember that, yeah, you know what? This is what I was seeing when the market was closed and it was nice and quiet. And then you could start to open up the computer and see where things are at. That way you're going in fresh, and you're Also remembering your plans. Maybe it's as simple as that. Maybe that's one strategy or tactic that you might be using. Again, not sexy, but it's effective. And then finally, this flow state, this flow area where you're feeling in flow, that's one of the big goals. That's where you're executing with clarity. You're not perfect. You're never going to be perfect, but perfect is not the goal. Being present is the goal. Trading with clarity is the goal. You trust your process. You're detached from any outcome, from any one trade. Sure, over 100 trades, you expect to come out ahead. You might even know a particular number that you should hit after 100 trades. But no one trade really matters because you know that you're playing the odds. This state up here, this is where momentum builds slowly, and then it starts to get more progressive. Here's something that I feel most traders miss. Trying to skip ahead to flow without going through the integration. If you're trying to jump, if you're trying to jump from here to here without going through the process, that's just a recipe for chaos and a recipe for disaster. You don't push yourself into this flow state, this ideal place, without going through the integration. You need to build habits first, and it's from those habits that allow this here to emerge. Habits take time to develop. Habits also take time to deconstruct if we have some habits that need to be broken or removed completely. If you're in the frustration or the awareness areas right now, it doesn't mean that you're broken. It just means that you're earlier in the process. Or maybe if you're somebody that's been at this for a little while, maybe it means that you're finally starting to do the real work. Right? Because so often we could get caught up in thinking that other things are the quote unquote real work of maybe studying the latest chart pattern or the latest indicator, or maybe you think that it's listening into a conference call or something like that. And not to say that those things are unimportant, but when it comes to building your mindset and building something that's going to allow you to be consistent, this is where the work really happens. Let me share with you a little story. I worked with a trader recently. He had a pretty good system. He had solid watch lists, great entries, really great entries. This guy was nailing them probably about 70% of the time. But he'd emotionally spiral the second the trade would turn red. His journaling process needed some work. He wasn't really reviewing all that much other than his P&L. He didn't really realize that he was trading from a position of fear of failure rather than a desire to grow. If that resonates, let me know. Put it into the chat. But once we uncovered that he was trading from that position of fear of failure versus a desire to grow, once we uncovered that, we were able to build a simple worst day plan where you take a look at what your worst day might be, and not just from a trading perspective where, oh man, I might be in this trade and what if it gaps down, but thinking about it from a life perspective. What if you're called into a meeting in the middle of the day and you've got your trade on? Can't just very well not go to the meeting, right? So planning around your life. Well, what if you need to well, what if you get a call from your kid's school and all of a sudden you've got to go pick them up? Can your system withstand those kind of middle of the day emergencies that come up from time to time, even if they're rare? Your system still has to be able to bend and shift and mold with those things, because otherwise, well, if you're listening to this show, you know how quickly trades can and markets can move in the opposite direction. Am I right? So once we started to develop this worst day plan, this guy that I was coaching, he started to scale down some of his trades. In scaling down his trades, he was able to become a little bit more consistent. He was able to figure out a way where he was able to set up his whole plan the night before, place orders that would set up a one cancels the other kind of order. This is something that, if you're unfamiliar with that, think or swim allows you to set up these orders where you could say, if this happens, then buy. If that happens, then sell. And you could set up all that stuff ahead of time. So that way you plan at night, set up the orders, and then you basically walk away and then you check it the following evening to see, well, what happened? And you could manage everything while the markets close. This is a process and a plan that ended up working out very well for this guy. He was able to get consistent. He's not quite in this flow area yet, but he's on his way. Definitely well into the integration phase. And this right here, this is where the real transformation lives. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, man, oh man, I've been stuck in that frustration zone for weeks, maybe even months now, I wouldn't call that a red flag per se. I think that it's a sign that you're ready to shift. So ask yourself this: where am I on this curve? And what support or structure would actually help me take the next step? I don't think that you need to blow up your system in order to grow. You just need to upgrade the way that you think about growth. Jenny, thank you for the comment. That is a huge aha. Keeping your mindset positive works in all areas of life. Indeed. Indeed. So I'd like to leave you with this before we move on to our open Q&A. And if you do have questions for me, now's the time. Go ahead, put them into the chat, whether you're watching us over on YouTube, on X. I see somebody over on Twitch. I think we've got a couple of people over on Facebook. Wherever you're watching from, now's the time. Get your questions into the chat, get your comments into the chat, and we'll do some Q&A. But I want to leave you with this. If you want help with moving up the curve, we've got a free a free 9-question mindset reset over on marrowwealth.com. It'll help you pinpoint exactly where your mindset is getting in the way and what to do about it. There's, depending on where you're at, there's either a link in my bio, like if you're watching over on X, or if you're on YouTube, there's links down in the description. So, and I'll also put a link over in the chat. Let me know if you guys are able to get to that. But we've got many ways to get over to marrowwealth.com and get this 9-question trading mindset reset. And it's very helpful. So if this hits home, share it with someone else who needs it. I think that there's enough noise in the world. Let's start spreading some clarity. Let's get to some questions. Let's see, well, what questions do you guys have? Earlier today, we were talking a little bit about progressive exposure with some of our accelerator members. I'll share a little bit about that with you guys, because progressive exposure it's one of the ways that can allow you to step on the gas when things are working very well. It's one of the things that can help you to step on the brakes when things stop working. And it's really one of the things that's helped keep me in this game for so long. So, what is progressive exposure? Progressive exposure just really means that, in a nutshell, that you're able to take profits and roll them into your next trade in order to start to size up. And on the flip side, when the market isn't working for you, you start to hit the brakes and size down. That way, you're keeping your equity curve near its highs for the most part. Here's how I've been able to do that most recently. So right now we're looking at Netflix. I started this trade back here on April 21st. This started to work out pretty quickly, and I was able to make, I think I'm up about 15% on this trade so far. So it's in profits, and I was able to nail down some of those profits already. So because I have those profits, I was able to take some of those profits and start to roll them into my next trades. Now, here's a trade right here in TTAN. And because I had profits from Netflix and from a couple of other trades in here, I was able to take those profits and scale up just a little bit in this next trade here. Because I have profits, I'm able to risk more without risking my principal. Think of the principal as the amount that you start with, right? So let's say that you're trading, just to keep the numbers nice and round, let's say that you're trading with 100 grand. You've got that 100 grand and you want to try to grow it. As you start to make profits on your first couple of trades, let's say that you put on this trade in Netflix, you're with me there. Let's say that you've made 15%, and now your account has jumped up. And let's say that your account is at 110,000. Great. So now on your next trade, you're able to size up just a little bit more, right? Like you don't need to take the same size as you did on the original trade. You could bet a little bit more that initial principal that you had, that 100,000 plus some of your profits, that 10,000, into the next trade. Now, you don't know if the next trade is going to be a winner or a loser, but in order to start to ramp up your progress, you could start to bet heavier when things start to align. One of the ways that I like to do that, and I've mentioned this a couple of times before when we were just talking about it in great detail with our accelerator members earlier today, is the concept of this three lenses of market readiness. Now, this is what I use to help to figure out, should I really be stepping on the gas now or should I not? Because to me, it's more about just finding a high quality setup and then just throwing more money into the next setup and letting it compound that way. I want to see these three lenses all moving together and all making progress before I start to scale up. So I want to see the general market doing well, meaning your major indexes, and I want to see them doing well across time frames. I want to see the system doing well. That's the stocks that are passing my screens. I want to see more stocks passing my screens, because if there's more stocks passing the screens, then that means that there's more merchandise to choose from. And I also want to see quality setups, because just because something passes a screen, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily ready to buy. I want to test the quality. And so if I'm seeing quality setups showing up, and if I start to take those quality setups and they start to make progress, then that's a sign that, hey, the market is starting to heat up for me. Now it's time to start to scale up. But if one of these are not in play, then it's a time to be cautious. And so that's something that really helps out quite a bit with progressive exposure, knowing how much to bet and when. And again, like I mentioned, that was something that we talked about inside our accelerator program earlier today. So just about at the end. So if you have any other questions, now's the time to get them in. Now the show's kind of funny. As the show goes on, we tend to get more and more people coming in. So if you're just joining us now, welcome. But we had quite a bit earlier in the show, so the recording will be up soon. But if you do have any last minute questions that you want to ask, trading related or otherwise, now's the time. So earlier in the show, we spoke about the mindset shift curve. And to show you all what that one was, if you're just tuning in, here is the mindset shift curve, where most people start out here in the frustration zone. And that's where most people tend to quit. It's where you feel emotionally raw and you're starting to question things. It's where a lot of the system hopping happens. A lot of the, oh man, what I'm doing right now isn't working. Let's throw on another indicator, or let's find what some other guru has to say. That's the frustration zone. A lot of people tend to live in that zone. Eventually, something shifts and you start to see the real problem, that it's not the edge at all, that it's really all about the execution of that edge. And you start to see what sort of behaviors need to be changed. And this is where mentorship really, really can make a huge difference for people. Then you get into this integration phase where you're starting to learn about new habits, things like journaling, things like post analysis, maybe working with someone directly. All that is in your integration phase. And it's not where you're necessarily going to be perfect, but you're making progress. And then finally, you get to this flow state. And even in the flow state, too, it's not about perfection. None of this is about perfection. It's about clarity. It's about executing with confidence, and your confidence isn't rooted in some sort of false reality that you think that, oh, well, now every trade is destined to be a winner. No, it comes from knowing your system inside and out. It comes from having great habits. It's from having all of the habits from the integration phase dialed in, where it's not really something that you even necessarily have to think about doing. It's becomes part of your identity. That's what flow is. And that's where the momentum really is. So I think that that about covers it all for today. So if you do have other questions or comments that you'd like to share, please feel free to drop comments wherever you happen to be watching this. I do go back and I review all the comments that people drop later on. But for now, I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you again next week. Take care. Much love, and as always, God bless.
Hey, thanks so much for sticking around to the end. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button down below and become a part of the Marrow Wealth community. And make sure that you check out some of the other videos on the channel. They're exactly what you need to see. And leave a comment down below. I read all of them. Leave a comment.